Over the past year, we've directed federal agencies to promote access to voting, led by the Vice President. We've appointed top civil rights advocates to help the U.S. Department of Justice, which has doubled its voting rights enforcement staff. Today, we call on Congress to get done what history will judge. Pass the Freedom to Vote Act. Pass it now, which will prevent voter suppression. It's also time to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. I've been having these quiet conversations with the members of Congress for the last 2 months. I'm tired of being quiet. Folks, it'll restore the strength of the Voting Rights Act of '65, the one President Johnson signed after John Lewis was beaten, nearly killed on Bloody Sunday, only to have the Supreme Court weakened it multiple times over the past decade. Restoring the Voting Rights Act would mean that Justice Department can stop discriminatory laws before they go into effect. Before they go into effect. Even Strom Thurmond came to support voting rights. But Republicans today can't and won't. Not a single Republican has displayed the courage to stand up to a defeated president to protect America's right to vote. Not one. Not one. We have 50-50 in the United States Senate. That means we have 51 presidents. You all think I'm kidding. I've been pretty good at working with senators my career, but man, when you got 51 presidents, it gets harder. Any one can change the outcome. Sadly, the United States Senate, designed to be the world's greatest deliberative body, has been rendered a shell of its former self. It gives me no satisfaction in saying that as an institutionalist, as a man who was honored to serve in the Senate. But as an institutionalist, I believe that the threat to our democracy is so grave that we must find a way to pass these voting rights bills. Debate them, vote, let the majority prevail. And if that bare minimum is blocked, we have no option but to change the Senate rules, including getting rid of the filibuster for this.
Finally, we've been waiting for this speech from Joe Biden for far too long, and it couldn't have come soon enough. Now, if you needed any indication of just how far off the cliff the Republican Party has gone, remember that when it comes to the Voting Rights Act, it was supported by every single Republican president before Trump, including Nixon, Ford, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush. It was passed in 1965 and then reauthorized or extended in 1970, 1975, 1982, 1992, and 2006, most recently by a vote of 98-0 in the Senate. And yet now, 0 Republicans are on record supporting this bill. Not one. But sure, tell me again how it's the Democrats who are the radicals. In fact, here's what the current Republican leader in the Senate himself said when it comes to the Voting Rights Act.
I cannot think of any reason why anyone on either side of the aisle would oppose the protection of the franchise of all Americans. Leader McConnell, 2004. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 represents one of this country's greatest steps forward. Leader McConnell, 2006. That he was overwhelmed to witness such a moment in history when the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965. Leader McConnell.
The obvious fact is this: Republicans don't want to change the filibuster rules to allow voting rights to pass because they rely on rigging the rules of the game in their favor to win. It is as simple as that. They're not willing to run on their platform. I mean, hell, they don't even have a platform. Their platform is to wait for some errant synapse to fire in Donald Trump's brain before some smattering of unintelligible words falls out of his face, and then that becomes gospel. Weird how that doesn't seem to be resonating with the voters. And even if they did have a platform, What would it be? Pretending climate change isn't real? Cutting taxes for millionaires and billionaires? Stripping women of their reproductive rights? On issue after issue, Republicans are woefully out of touch with Americans. And so instead of, changing their positions to attract more people, they've opted to just change the rules to legislate themselves into majorities. And so they've passed voter suppression laws, they've restricted drop boxes in counties with large Democratic voting blocks, they've gerrymandered congressional districts, they've closed polling locations in minority-majority precincts, they've allowed Republican-controlled state legislatures to reorganize local boards of elections with zero oversight, they've literally outlawed food and drinks in line to vote. Not for nothing, but that is not what you do when you're confident in your ability to win. Now at this point, Senate Majority Leader Schumer will bring these bills, the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, to the floor for a vote, where they'll be filibustered by Republicans, meaning Republicans won't even allow Democrats to debate these bills. And then comes the pivotal moment, where they'll have the opportunity to change the rules of the Senate, ostensibly to create a carve-out for voting rights legislation. And Republicans will wail about the sanctity of the filibuster and the framers and the Constitution, but just remember, the filibuster is not in the Constitution, and the framers favored majority rule. In fact, there were only a few instances where the framers actually wanted a supermajority to pass anything, and they specified those instances clearly, like ratifying treaties, amending the Constitution, and convicting an impeached president. In fact, we don't even have to guess what the framers thought about this issue, because they literally said it. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, wrote that requiring a supermajority would mean, quote, an interested minority might to advantage of it to screen themselves from equitable sacrifices to the general weal, or in particular emergencies, to extort unreasonable indulgences. Alexander Hamilton wrote that if, quote, a pertinacious minority can control the opinion of a majority, the result would be tedious delays, continual negotiation and intrigue, contemptible compromises of the public good. Sound familiar? And beyond that, even the modern Republicans have also eliminated the filibuster where it suited them. What were the biggest accomplishments during the Trump administration? The 2017 tax cut for millionaires and billionaires and the reshaping of the federal judiciary. Both of those were achieved without the filibuster, with McConnell specifically nuking the filibuster for Supreme Court appointments, specifically because they wanted Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett to get confirmed on razor-thin majorities. In other words, they're not actually concerned with the sanctity of the filibuster, they're concerned with their grip on power. And that's what this is about. Republicans are hell-bent on holding on to power through whatever means necessary. And so they've watched as Republican-controlled state legislatures have decimated voter protections across the country, without supermajority thresholds, I might add. And in order to shore up those anti-democratic measures, congressional Republicans are now hiding behind their supposed deference to some arcane Senate procedural tool, even though they eliminated that tool in every single instance where it suited them. Convenient, huh? So I hope that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are listening, because what they do in the next few days will define their legacies. Joe Biden put it best.
How do you want to be remembered? At consequential moments in history, they present a choice. Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? This is the moment to decide, to defend our elections, to defend our democracy.
To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.